Hi guys and welcome back. In this video we're going to learn about unpacking keyword arguments. The last video was a little bit confusing. Now it's going to get a little bit more confusing as we learn about keyword arguments. Once these two videos are over though, you're going to have all of the tools necessary in Python to create any type of function and use it in many different ways. So up to now, we've been learning about all these fundamental building blocks, and this is one of the last ones. After this, we can learn about object-oriented programming, and that's another type of beast altogether. Let's start by defining a simple function that will use this unpacking of keyword arguments. So I'm going to do ** quargs. Now, args and quargs, when you use *args and ** quargs, are the usual names for these things, but they don't have to be. You can use whatever variable name you want here, and indeed with *args as well. We're going to just print them out, so I want you to take a look at what happens when I call my named function and I say something like name equal Bob and age equal 25. If I run this code here, you can see that what we get out is a dictionary. So we called our named function that does this dictionary unpacking with two keyword arguments. And what happens in Python is that these keyword arguments all get collected into this quargs variable. That is what the ** does. It collects keyword arguments. So all of these keyword arguments get collected and put into a dictionary where the dictionary key is equal to the name of the keyword argument. So you end up with a name key and a Bob value for this one, and an age key and a 25 value for this one. The same way that you can collect named arguments into a dictionary, you can go the other way around. You can unpack a dictionary into named arguments. So I'm going to make a small change to my named function. I'm going to pass in name and age, and I'm going to print them out, name and age. And now I'm going to define a details dictionary which has a name of Bob and an age of 25. Now I'm going to call my named function with my details. We know that this won't work because details is a dictionary and I'm passing it as a positional argument, which means that the details dictionary will become a value for the name parameter, but the age parameter will not have a value. We need to pass that in separately, something like this. But of course, that's not what we want to do. We don't want to pass in this whole thing as a name. That would be a bit weird. And if you run this, you'll see that you get the entire dictionary printed out because that's the name variable, and then 25 printed out because that's the age variable. Instead, what we want to do is we want to pass in the name key as the name parameter and the age key as the age parameter. And we saw how to do this in the last video just by unpacking the dictionary into two named arguments like that. When you do that, it treats the key as the name for the argument and age as the key for the argument and assigns to them the value associated with those. So you do end up now with Bob and 25. Note that if you had ** quargs, which is the collection of multiple named arguments, you can print them out and you can still do this. What will happen now is instead of doing name equal Bob and age equal 25, you're doing exactly the same thing, but using this dictionary to pass in multiple keyword arguments, and then they are being collected into this dictionary up here, and then you're going to print the dictionary out. So that is how these two stars work. They can be used in a function to collect named arguments into a dictionary, or they can be used in a function call to unpack a dictionary into keyword arguments. Let's say we have another function called print nicely that is going to print out this dictionary into a nice format. So let's call the named function first to print the arguments out, and then we are going to print them nicely. So we're going to do for arg and value in quargs.items, then we're going to print arg and the value. Notice that quargs is a dictionary, so you can use the items method on it so that you can iterate over two of these things. Notice that here we're using a whole bunch of things that we've learned so far, including normal data types like dictionaries. We are calling functions. We are destructuring the tuple that returns into two values. We are even unpacking and repacking named arguments. So there's a lot of stuff going on here, and I know it's a little bit confusing. Now with this function, we can do print nicely, and we can pass name is Bob and age is 25, and what's going to happen is we're going to collect these named arguments into this dictionary. Then we're going to call the named function, but we're going to unpack that dictionary into named arguments. So we're going to pass in name equal Bob and age equal 25. Those are then going to be collected into this dictionary, and they're going to be printed out. So we're going to print a dictionary. And then we're going to come back out here and we're going to iterate over the items, getting arg and value for each item in the dictionary, which is going to give us name and Bob, and then age and 25. And finally, we're going to print those out in a bit of a nicer way. So we're going to print the dictionary first and then 2 more lines. And that is indeed what we get back. You can use both, actually, star args and star quargs if you want. And nothing changes. You're going to collect all the positional arguments into args and all the named arguments into quargs. So you can do something like both. 135, name equal Bob, and age equal 25. 1, 3, and 5 will be collected into args because they are positional arguments. Name equal Bob and age equal 25 will be collected into quargs. So if we run that, you can see that you get a tuple of arguments and then a dictionary of arguments. This syntax here, args and quargs with the stars, is normally used to accept an unlimited number of arguments. So you can pass in anything you want to this function, any positional arguments and any named arguments, and it will accept them. And that is normally used so that some of those arguments or all of those arguments can be passed on to another function. Here's an example of something that is done quite frequently. And we haven't written this code. Don't worry about how it's implemented. But you have a post function that takes in a URL, some data, some variable called JSON, and then any number of keyword arguments. And it returns just calling another function. And it passes the URL, the data, the JSON, and all of the keyword arguments. So it essentially seems to do the same thing, but it also adds an extra argument. So this is a very common pattern to do in Python, to have a function that seemingly just calls another, but adds something more to it. And that is used to simplify calling this initial function so that you don't have to pass in this argument as well. So just an example of the quargs being used to essentially pass arguments from one function to another until they get used. So that's a very common thing to do. A final example, if you define a function that uses this unpacking, you need to call it with a mapping if you're going to pass in this star. So if you do star Bob, you're going to get an error because this is not a dictionary. Similarly with star none, you're going to get an error because that's not a dictionary. So if you're working with variables in your code and then eventually you're passing them unpacked to a function, then you must make sure that they are dictionaries. If they are anything else, then you're going to get an error when this line runs. So that's something that you'll see quite frequently in Python code. The variable has an unexpected value or something like that, and students sometimes struggle to determine why you get an error. That's because sometimes the variables that we use may not be what we expect. That's it for this video though. Thanks for joining me in this one. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.